A Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Dodgers are giving early indications that they are serious about winning a second straight World Series championship. They beat Atlanta Tuesday night 3-1 to stay undefeated. The Dodgers are 7-0. The impressive start ties the Dodgers with the 1933 New York Yankees for the best start in Major League Baseball for a returning champion. The Dodgers go for 8-0 tonight against Atlanta. The Clippers are back in action tonight. They're at home against New Orleans at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood. The Clippers have 7 games remaining in the regular season, and all of them could be important. The Clippers are a half game behind Memphis and Minnesota for 6th place in the Western Conference. The first 6 teams qualify for the playoffs and avoid the play-in round. The Lakers are 4th in the West with 7 games left. They're at home Thursday night against Golden State. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey, this is Zoe Williams, the voice of reason, and for over 20 years, Parkside Economic Development Corporation has served Leimert Park and surrounding communities, empowering tomorrow's leaders and changing lives. Parkside EDC has awarded over $400,000 in college scholarships while sharing economic principles of the Big Five of money with students and their families. Parkside EDC partners with organizations like the Brotherhood Crusade to assure our youth have the financial acumen to succeed. Parkside EDC provides families and businesses with financial insights, offering free online, on-site, and on-air B-Warp presentations. The Black Wealth Attainment and Retention Programs helps our community acquire, sustain, and pass down legacy wealth. High school seniors can apply for this year's scholarship awards at parksideedc.org. Scholarships will be awarded at Parkside EDC's Gospel/Jazz Brunch on Sunday, April the 27th. For details, tickets, or donations, please visit parksideedc.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Tavis, Smiley, delighted to have you with us in this hour of our program. In this hour, conversation with award-winning independent journalist Ollie Winston, who will take us inside the world of No Lives Matter, and connect the dots to the current MAGA movement. To be clear, No Lives Matter is how might I put this? It's a tendency, not an actual grouping, and incorporates dangerous elements far beyond neo-fascism and white supremacy. If anything, Ollie Winston believes that No Lives Matter actually shatters these various categories as we conceive of them here in the U.S. and in mainstream society. And so I'm looking forward to this conversation in this hour, for the hour, with Ollie Winston as we talk about the violent rise of No Lives Matter. Ollie, good to have you on. How are you, sir?
Thank you very much. I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for having me on.
Before I jump into this conversation about No Lives Matter, let me just circle back right quick to the conversation we had at the top of our show today about this Palestine march in Washington this Saturday. I know this is in your wheelhouse as well. And I didn't get a chance to ask this of our guest, Edward Ahmed Mitchell, in that first half hour, but I thought about it the minute I had to pivot to the next guest. And that is, with all that we've been witnessing, whether or not those who participate and join this rally on Saturday in Washington should be concerned about being watched by the government and being targeted, as we see the Trump administration targeting others for deportation. So it's one thing to go to the march to support, but I'm wondering about whether certain people ought to be concerned about their being targeted and perhaps even labeled and arrested and deported somewhere in the near future.
So a few things. First off, we are in completely uncharted territory insofar as the government's decision to take punitive action against Americans, permanent residents, visitors, folks here on visas for protected First Amendment activity, which, by the way, covers anybody in the United States, whether you're an American citizen or not. That's the whole point of it.
Right.
But, this current administration has decided they'll shoot first and ask questions later. And the courts are still playing catch-up with that dynamic. It's really pushing the rule of law to a massive crisis in this country. So that's the broader overarching framework, and that is to say that if folks are... there are folks who are being deported in New York City right now who have green cards, who've had green cards since they were children, for posting a flyer and receiving a desk appearance ticket, which is it's an infraction. It's something that you can basically fill out at a police precinct and pay a fine of $250 or $100 for. But people are being removed for that, for First Amendment activity. So, two things. One, it is very clear that the government is taking punitive action against supporters of Palestine. Two, they are stripping people of legal status that, frankly, in ways that won't match up to the challenge that is being leveled against those measures in court. And three, the current government and the broader pro-Israel Zionist movement in general does consider pro-Palestinian activism to be terrorism. And in the current administration, they have very strong allies. I mean, they're essentially taking names from things like the Middle Eastern Project and Canary Mission for their deportation list, which are very openly identify as members of the Israel lobby. In the case of Canary Mission, I mean, there's an active question as to whether it's an agent of a foreign government and whether it's an unregistered agent of a foreign government. So, yes, people who go to those marches should be cognizant of the current environment. They should take the appropriate precautions with regard to the security of their devices, what's present on their devices if they go to those marches, notifying their lawyers, and maybe even getting some advice about whether or not they may consider or reconsider attending those marches. Yeah. They will 100% be subject to surveillance. Those movements have been under quite heavy law enforcement surveillance, not just in the current administration, but realistically for the past 40, 50 years. And this just puts everything out in the cold light of day, I think.
This is going to be in Donald Trump's face this week. I mean, it's a march in Washington, obviously. And I guess my question very quickly here is what you expect the Trump administration to do when they see this kind of pro-Palestinian activism in their face.
I expect mass arrests. I expect organizers to get picked off. I expect people to get picked up at their homes long after the marches happen. I expect organizations to get investigated and prosecuted for contributing to the organization of said marches. And I think you are going to, based on every single indication we've seen from how the Trump administration has dealt with protests in its last iteration, I'm sure your listeners remember the Black Lives Matter movement, the second iteration of which, the George Floyd uprisings. The Trump administration was on the verge of calling out the 82nd and 101 Airborne against protesters, and they used federal officers to attack protesters in Oregon, in Washington, D.C. I mean, it's just, they used Bureau of Prison officers without name tags and identification to abduct people off the streets. That was the last time. That was 5 years ago. It's not that long ago, and this administration clearly feels far more emboldened to take more drastic action, and I think that it's unfortunate that people have such short memories about what we saw in the very immediate past. So I think there's nothing wrong with getting in the president's face. I think that's 100% an American thing to do. It's our right. It's our heritage. But at the same time, there will be get back.
Yeah. We shall see what happens this Saturday at this march and beyond, as Ollie Winston just laid out for us. You heard him mention a moment ago Black Lives Matter. When we come forward for the rest of the hour, we'll talk about No Lives Matter, indeed the violent rise of No Lives Matter. We'll let him explain it for the hour when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Interrogating and unpacking. That's what we do around here. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Hi, I'm Dominique DePrima, and it's almost time to celebrate KBLA's 4th anniversary, coming up Juneteenth 2025. We'll be marking the achievement with 4 key community events, including a special symposium, luncheon, and brain trust hosted by me entitled The State of Black Women in Los Angeles. Keep it locked here for details on how to join us for this groundbreaking symposium examining the unique challenges, triumphs, and contributions of Black women in Los Angeles in the areas of education, healthcare, community leadership, cultural and political contributions. This public convocation will provide a critical forum to address the specific social, economic, and political realities facing Black women in LA today. We'll go live with a radio broadcast and YouTube live stream, a public discussion, and a private dialogue with some of LA's most impactful women. It's an affirmation of Black women standing at the intersection of race and gender in times of adversity while demonstrating remarkable resilience and leadership. We will listen and we will speak out and be heard, all in service of finding opportunities and solutions. Please plan to join us in celebrating our 4th anniversary by amplifying the voices of Black women. For more on our symposium and 4 events celebrating 4 years on the air, simply stay tuned or keep an eye on KBLA1580.com and help make this Juneteenth more jubilant with all of us at KBLA Talk 1580.
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number 536994.
At Exquisite Family Mortuary, we know how overwhelming it can be planning a meaningful farewell for your loved one. Secure your peace of mind by calling Charlotte White at 323-577-5562. That's Charlotte White at 323-577-5562. From traditional funeral services to memorials to direct cremation, pre-needs, and more. Call Charlotte White at Exquisite Family Mortuary for Southern hospitality in Southern California. That's Charlotte White at 323-577-5562. Exquisite Family Mortuary is located nearby in Inglewood, California. Exquisite Family Mortuary, where your loved one becomes our loved one. Sometimes he fails at fitting in, but we're okay with that. You're inside the Tavis Smiley Show.
You are indeed with Ollie Winston, award-winning independent journalist who is going to take us right now inside the dangerous world of No Lives Matter and how it connects to the MAGA movement inside the White House. We got the rest of the hour, Ollie, so you can stretch out here. Tell me about the violent rise of No Lives Matter, and I'll jump in as I need to.
Sure thing. So I've been reporting on extremism since 2016, 2017. My background was as a police reporter at the time. I was living in the beautiful city of Oakland, California, and we had a lot of members of neo-Nazi gangs come and get very physical. In 2016, there was a huge brawl up in the state capitol in Sacramento. A couple people were stabbed. Some skinheads that got political were up in there. And then in 2017, there was the Battle of Berkeley, where a bunch of neo-Nazis came and decided to duke it out with anti-fascists in probably the most progressive congressional district in the country. So over the next few years, I followed the kind of trajectory of street gangs getting involved in street politics again in a way that they hadn't done since the 1990s. Back into the more the shadowier world of hard right militants who, you know, you could essentially think of it. You can think of as Tim McVeigh's kids who want to blow up federal buildings and that sort of thing. And as the movement got deadlier and deadlier in the last years of the Trump administration, and federal law enforcement actually started taking them quite seriously, something that we are not clear that they will continue to do, but that's something we can get into later. The movement started to move online and deeper into the recesses of services like Telegram, a very, unregulated would be a light term for it. It's the Wild West. It's a combination of a social media app and a messaging service that has long, maybe since about the middle of the 2010s, has served as a central hub for terrorist groups from the range of the Islamic State in Syria to, the groups that we're talking about in the Trump administration, the Atomwaffen Division, the base. But there's a deeper side to that entire world, and that is the universe of child sexual exploitation material, the distribution of CSAM, child pornography, and also the world of extortionists. And there's always been kind of a world of online hackers and extortionists, SIM swappers. That sort of world has existed online, but during the pandemic, that universe spawned a particularly nasty, I guess you can call it a cult called 764, where young pedophiles and Satanists would extort other young people, and we're all talking like folks 25 and under. Oftentimes you'd have minors exploiting minors. They would extort people, into vulnerable young people, typically folks who were folks of color or had gender or sexuality fluidity, into giving them sexually exploiting material, and then extorting them because of they had a bit of compromise on them. They extorted them into committing acts of self-harm, violence against others, instructed them to kill their pets, beat their siblings up, the ultimate goal was to tempt them to commit suicide. And it was all really for the purpose of notoriety and in-group status and, I guess, fame, internet fame. I can't really emphasize how much of this activity has to do with, I guess, the kind of king-of-the-hill behavior that adolescents engage in, except it moved entirely online during the pandemic. And these are also folks who kind of thrive not only in the sexual abuse world, but also in a subgenre of online content that's called gore, which are channels and Instagram accounts, YouTube accounts. They still exist, even though those services try and knock them down, that circulate hyper-violent material like executions, torture, snuff videos, that sort of thing. And in time, I actually became aware of these groups because they crossed over with a certain level of far-right ideology that I had been tracking, a Satanist group called the Order of Nine Angles that is very closely cross-pollinated with the most violent type of neo-Nazism out there on the internet. Acceleration, it's millenarianism. Some academics call it accelerationism, but this is quite deep in the reads. The bottom line is that it became quite clear to me that there were hundreds of people, at least, who participated in these networks, these abuse networks and extortion networks, and they had thousands of victims. My colleagues I wrote about this for Wired with colleagues at Der Spiegel in Germany and the Washington Post in the U.S., Recorder in Romania in early 2024. The reason why I talk about this world is that there was one individual in this world, a young German teenager living in foster care in Romania, who live-streamed the murder of a Romanian senior citizen to other members of this group, 764. And he also attacked another senior citizen, wounding them severely but didn't kill them. His actions became incredibly he gained a huge amount of notoriety on the internet, and he in turn spawned copycats. That is the genesis of No Lives Matter. No Lives Matter is a tendency within this broader universe of child sexual exploitation cults and abuse cults that's known as COM, COM, short for community. And the tendency specifically focuses on causing mayhem and ripping down Western society through acts of random violence, through sheer nihilistic terrorism. That is the best way I can describe No Lives Matter. In the past, I think we can put it between maybe 12 to 18 months. There have been attacks, shootings, full of bomb plots, threats linked to this group in the United Kingdom, Sweden. There have been a series of knife attacks and beatings associated with this in Sweden, Bulgaria, the United States, and a couple other countries that are slipping my mind. But it's really taken on a very unique dimension whereby these kids are starting to graduate from acts of exploitation and extortion into paying other people to commit firebombings, drive-by shootings for them, plotting to murder homeless people for the sake of their own gratification and their ideology, their own personal notoriety. It has an influence directly on a number of school shootings that have taken place in the United States in the past 3 months, and actually right from December up until about now.
Oh.
So it's gained it's gained a lot of velocity very quickly.
Tell me more about the way this. I didn't want to interrupt you. I want to just got to get your frame out there. Tell me more about the way this is all intertwined. The far right, white supremacy, the MAGA movement. Tell me how this is all intertwined. I want to make sure that I'm not missing the point here.
Well, here's the issue. It's quite. We're looking at what's called hybrid ideology now. So the internet has, which is a terrible term and too academic for what we're talking about, but it's the best way I can think of to lay it out. And here's what it means in layman's terms. You're not looking at extremists who are doctrinaire anymore, who believe in a set of, very strict principles. I'm in this group. These are our principles. This is our text. We're going to abide by Tim McVeigh's teaching. We're going to follow the Turner Diaries to the bullet, to the letter. We're going to pursue our Fourth Reich. This is the process by which we're going to go about it. No, you get people who pick and choose certain components from certain ideologies. They'll pick, okay, well, I like Anders Breivik and Dylan Roof, so or Dylan Klebold and or Harrison Klebold, the Columbine shooters. So I'm going to pick a little bit of ultra-violence from them. Maybe I'm into the nature a little bit, so I'll pick up a little bit from Patrick Crusius, the El Paso shooters manifesto, and I'm going to talk about the need to eliminate surplus population to maintain a clean planet and a green future for all of us. Maybe, I'm into some weirder ideas about techno-authoritarianism, so I'll incorporate some language that's closer to folks like Elon Musk. They will pick and choose bits of ideology and combine them into their own synthesis to justify their actions, which are why you see young men like Solomon Henderson, a young African-American man from Tennessee who shot up his school, I believe it was in January. He identified as a white supremacist, which is mind-blowing in one respect, but it also really closely mirrors the evolution of the online far right and the kind of
let me jump in. How does a black kid identify as a white supremacist?
Well, here's the thing. There are images of him that have been made public of him, like coloring in his face with whiteout on a Photoshop mechanism, and of him like imitating him posing in clothing and in particular styles that imitate like white nationalist shooters who are referred to as quote unquote saints in their online subculture. He was drawn to the violence, he was drawn to the extremism, he was drawn to some of the nihilistic rhetoric that circles around there, and frankly, teenagers do get into transgressive behavior. That's something that happens in adolescence. But this is transgression to the ultimate point. It implies a high level of alienation from his own community. It implies somebody who's deeply troubled psychologically. And also, he found online community amongst these other Nazis. And it's quite... it's not uncommon to find Latino Nazis, gay Nazis, Asian Nazis, Asian white supremacists, Latino white supremacists. These ideologies are not... There are no firm, bright lines between them. And also the allure, I cannot underestimate the allure of how online and like in groups and affirmation, how how important that is for these online groups and these particular cultures, because that's how you embolden somebody's sense of identity. They're getting their entire socialization through the internet and through these particular corners and subcultures within the internet. And they know the language, they know the memes, they know the iconography, they know the references, the texts, the photos, the PDFs. They can really hit it all.
Let me ask you another question here. How concerned, I want to ask you, there are two questions here. Let me just take them one at a time, obviously. How concerned should we be about the radicalization of black kids, given the story you've just shared?
You know, Henderson's case was, it's not long before Henderson committed his massacre, last summer, there was a stabbing in a Anatolian city of Eskişehir in the country of Turkey. I'm half Turkish. I paid very close attention to the story. It may sound crazy, but here's the thing. This is a young Turkish man in a country which has its own very unique, hyper-violent tradition of ultranationalism, of fascism. He committed his stabbing in direct imitation of Dylan Roof, Anders Breivik, Brenton Tarrant, all these white nationalist, icons, if you will, because that was the subculture that he was part of, drawn to, and that's how he became indoctrinated. He, in turn, was referenced by Solomon Henderson when Solomon Henderson committed his shooting, and by a young woman in Madison, Wisconsin, Samantha Rupno, who shot up a school in Madison in December, and she was in contact with Henderson as well. So the types of radicalization are really starting to sprawl out in different ways that completely blow apart the categories that, quote-unquote, big extremism experts have set out in the past few decades to outline these phenomena. So it really is about who is using what on what corners of the internet.
Right.
And I really don't think that race or ethnicity or religion, those sort of backgrounds, isolate children from exposure to these particular tendencies, if you will.
No, I hear that, and that's sad, but I hear it. The other question I said I wanted to ask a moment ago is how concerned. I asked a moment ago how concerned we should be about black kids being radicalized. You answered that. My next question is how concerned black folk writ large should be about being targeted by this violent rise of No Lives Matter.
Black folks up there, along with folks of Jewish heritage, are extremely high on the target list. I think that's very true. It's not different than traditional forms of neo-Nazism and white supremacy in that respect, right? There are always lists of targets that they have. Also Muslims as well. Black Muslims, certainly. There's a huge population of black Muslims in the United States, and they've long been targeted by white supremacist groups for violence. So it is... It's a sad reality, but I do think that it's something that the African American community and the black community in the United States writ large should be concerned about and pay closer attention to, because again, the level, I can't underestimate how many cases related to 764 and these exploitation cults, the world that No Lives Matter comes from, are out there. When I spoke with senior federal officials in October, they indicated to me that they were assigning cases related to this phenomena every week, and that they existed in every single field office in the United States.
We are talking about the violent rise of No Lives Matter with Ollie Winston. More when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
For all the freedom-loving folk, this is Tavis Smiley.
I feel like freedom.
Bree Wood with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. A federal judge dismissed New York City Mayor Eric Adams' corruption case with prejudice, meaning the charges can't be brought up again. Adams had pleaded not guilty to bribery and fraud. Forecasters warn of life-threatening floods in the central U.S. as an atmospheric river could bring up to 4 months of rain in less than a week, causing historic flooding. This will be followed by a heat dome in the southeast with temperatures 10 to 20 degrees above average. Teresa Hudson Jordan, a black woman, is suing Delta Airlines for discrimination after being removed from a flight for allegedly looking at a white flight attendant. The flight attendant accused Jordan of noncompliance and disruptive behavior. Delta says they have zero tolerance for discrimination. And former President Barack Obama accidentally photobombed a family's picture at the D.C. Cherry Blossom Festival. The family was surprised and delighted, sharing the moment on social media. Obama apologized humorously, saying, "My bad." Get BIN News on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Imagine a photograph of your favorite place in California. Then right in the middle of it, one piece of litter. Litter has no place in our lives, not one piece. Together, let's change that. Clean California. Zero litter is the goal.
When you visit the San Diego Zoo Safari Park, the way you see the world begins to change. You realize that the more you encounter amazing species, the more you can't imagine a world without them. San Diego Zoo Safari Park. See conservation from a new perspective.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Dodgers are giving early indications that they are serious about winning a second straight World Series championship. They beat Atlanta Tuesday night 3-1 to stay undefeated. The Dodgers are 7-0. The impressive start ties the Dodgers with the 1933 New York Yankees for the best start in Major League Baseball for a returning champion. The Dodgers go for 8-0 tonight against Atlanta. The Clippers are back in action tonight. They're at home against New Orleans at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood. The Clippers have 7 games remaining in the regular season, and all of them could be important. The Clippers are a half game behind Memphis and Minnesota for 6th place in the Western Conference. The first 6 teams qualify for the playoffs and avoid the play-in round. The Lakers are 4th in the West with 7 games left. They're at home Thursday night against Golden State. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, I'm Dominique DePrima, and it's almost time to celebrate KBLA's 4th anniversary, coming up Juneteenth 2025. We'll be marking the achievement with 4 key community events, including a special symposium, luncheon, and brain trust hosted by me entitled The State of Black Women in Los Angeles. Keep it locked here for details on how to join us for this groundbreaking symposium examining the unique challenges, triumphs, and contributions of Black women in Los Angeles in the areas of education, healthcare, community leadership, cultural and political contributions. This public convocation will provide a critical forum to address the specific social, economic, and political realities facing Black women in LA today. We'll go live with a radio broadcast and YouTube live stream, a public discussion, and a private dialogue with some of LA's most impactful women. It's an affirmation of Black women standing at the intersection of race and gender in times of adversity while demonstrating remarkable resilience and leadership. We will listen and we will speak out and be heard, all in service of finding opportunities and solutions. Please plan to join us in celebrating our 4th anniversary by amplifying the voices of Black women. For more on our symposium and 4 events celebrating 4 years on the air, simply stay tuned or keep an eye on KBLA1580.com and help make this Juneteenth more jubilant with all of us at KBLA Talk 1580.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know? The United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time. Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about. KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. If you need help getting your resume in order, finding job training, or landing a job, we've got 3 great options for you. First, the City of Los Angeles has WorkSource centers across the area offering free job support. The California Workforce Development Board can help you with everything from GED prep to vocational training at no cost to you. On the federal level, the Department of Labor's American Job Centers offer a full range of services for job seekers and businesses alike. Visit careeronestop.org, or for more info, just call California's Help Center or visit cwdb.ca.gov or call 916-657-1440. For the City of Los Angeles programs, go to ewdd.lacity.gov or call 213-744-7300. All these services are free to help you get your next job. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Freedom is an endless meeting. So let's get back to it with Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Ali Winston, in case you've just tuned in, we are talking about the violent rise of No Lives Matter. In some ways, it's a difficult and challenging but sobering conversation that we need to be aware of, given the way that young people in this country are being radicalized. And some of those young people happen to be African-American youth who are being radicalized in this area and era. And we're trying to assess the threat level for black folk writ large, given the radicalization of what some might call our babies. They are our babies. They're being radicalized, but they're still our babies. Babies of all colors, I might add. But what happens in a country where you see the rise of these sort of splinter groups? And it's really a tendency, as I said earlier. It's really a tendency, not an actual grouping. But the violent rise of No Lives Matter ought to be of concern to all of us. Before I continue with Ali Winston, I want to play a clip from the State of the Black Union Symposium, which I curated and hosted for over a dozen years. This is a clip from 2007 at our SOBU gathering in Jamestown, Virginia, 2007. The voice you're about to hear is the voice of Dr. Julia Hare, noted psychologist. And of all the years of doing SOBU and of all the clips, and there are so many clips all over the internet never dies, right? There are SOBU clips everywhere, everywhere. People send them to me all the time. But of all the clips from that State of the Black Union series, I don't know that there's any clip that's been viewed more times than this clip. Millions and millions and millions and millions of views of this clip of Dr. Julia Hare. Once you hear it, you'll understand why I'm playing it, and I'll ask Ali Winston a question on the other side of it. Here is Dr. Julia Hare at SOBU in 2007.
The reason why we're so pleased to have the covenant, and this is the best part of our action plan, is to reclaim the minds of our children. They went into the black homes now, the powers that be, and told us that you cannot discipline your children anymore, and if you discipline your children, you will go into jail. Is this kind of thing they told us. Then they went into the public schools and took discipline out of there. So when we acted up in there, they put our boys, our black men, into something called special ed classes. And as you know, those special ed classes are nothing but holding cells until they can go to the state prison. But this is what they did. And then, the one thing that they knew, that if we can put them in prison, if we can have them convicted for a felony, then once they get out of prison, they cannot get a job because of that. They cannot get the job. And then if they happen to eke out and find a job, then they have to pay taxes on a job, yet they cannot vote, and I call that taxation without representation. That's what we're looking at. And if one of the things that we would learn to do, they did a grand thing when they took that discipline away from us, because when they made our parents afraid to discipline the children, then what happened? We found out that the teachers were afraid of the principals were scared of the superintendents was scared of the school board was scared of the parents, parents were scared of the children, and the children ain't scared of nobody.
And the children ain't scared of nobody. I played that clip specifically, Ollie, to ask you what happens in a society, talking about No Lives Matter and kids being radicalized, what happens in a society when the kids ain't scared of nobody?
When there are no consequences for action, people continue to replicate that behavior and to continue on that behavior. I'll give you an example that's not from the United States. It's from another country that is deeply impacted by No Lives Matter 764 COM. That is the erstwhile social democratic paradise of Sweden, which actually now has one of the highest rates of gun violence in Western Europe, thanks to a number of factors, one of which is the inability of their legal system to cope with a massive influx of narcotics and firearms, and the drug trade, which, of course, stems from social deprivation, concentration of poverty, racism, systematic bias, so on. But the bottom line is that in that country, there are a number of individuals who have been caught by the authorities participating in the world of child exploitation and extortion and abuse. One of these individuals was caught, charged, and pled guilty to extorting a young person into harming himself severely and distributing child pornography. This individual is under the age of 18. They were placed on home confinement and allowed full access to the internet without key logging software or any sort of restriction or probation conditions. They reoffended and were caught recently by the Swedish national television broadcaster, SVT, participating in these networks, and they have since been charged again for that. But the lack of any sort of supervision, serious consequence for that, those very harmful actions, which, by the way, in the United States has landed young people with severe prison time. You were talking 18-year-olds who were sentenced to a decade in federal prison. We're talking a young man in Texas, the founder of 764, Riley Cadenhead, who is currently serving 80 years in the Texas Supermax for dozens of counts of CSAM distribution and extortion and cyber crimes. The U.S., in some respects, these kids are getting heavier penalties, but that is only once the true nature of what they've done has become public and dozens, if not hundreds, of people are victimized. So, it's a hard it's a hard line to balance. You don't want to create a society that criminalizes youth, but at the same time, allowing children access to these platforms, which are entirely unregulated, and also bear a tremendous amount of responsibility for what occurs online and what young people are able to get into. That's a huge issue. But again, where do you draw the line with disciplining people and giving them a second chance? It's a very, very tough thing to negotiate, and it's frankly above my pay grade. But what I will say is that companies, massive online environments like Roblox, which is played by tens, if not hundreds of millions of children, Minecraft, the messaging platform Discord, Steam, Meta, Instagram, and YouTube, these are essential. And then Telegram, obviously. These are the sandboxes. These are the virtual playgrounds where this sort of abuse and grooming and radicalization happens. And they are deeply, deeply culpable.
Yeah. So they are culpable. I hear your point. When we come forward, I do want to come to this point you raised a moment ago about this tightrope, as it were, that one has to walk with regard to not living in a society or advancing notions of criminalizing children. You don't want to do that. You don't want to criminalize children. Children have to be allowed, as we were, to make mistakes. That's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin, though, is allowing them all the access they need to become radicalized. It is, in fact, a tightrope. Experts are at a loss for how to stop the spread of this violent rise of No Lives Matter. So we'll delve into that territory when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
From Leimert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up.
Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone, and should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
Before the fire, Altadena was a real-life Wakanda. A thriving black oasis just 15 miles from downtown Los Angeles. 80% black residents were homeowners, building intergenerational wealth against the odds. It was a hub of black-owned businesses, churches, and cultural institutions. It stood as a symbol of black resilience and economic independence. Then, in a matter of hours, it was gone. The fire tore through homes, swallowed businesses, and left behind a painful void. But was it just an unstoppable act of nature, or was negligence involved? Did officials ignore early warning signs? Were the response efforts delayed or insufficient? What role, if any, did corporate or government failures play? Survivors are demanding answers. Don't miss our KBLA Talk 1580 Town Hall. The Eden Altadena Fire, 100 days and counting. On Wednesday, April 16th, 4 to 6 p.m. at the Robinson Park Recreation Center, 1081 North Fair Oaks in Pasadena. Join Dominic DePrima, Nee Cordelai Corte, James Farr, Tavis Smiley, and a panel of survivors, community leaders, and experts as we commemorate Day 100 since the wildfires flared up. And we discuss where we go from here. It's KBLA's Eden Altadena Fire, 100 days and counting Town Hall. Wednesday, April 16th, 4 to 6 p.m. at the Robinson Park Recreation Center in Pasadena. Light refreshments to follow. Admission is free, but sign-up is required at our KBLA1580.com website. This is a community call to action brought to you by KBLA Talk 1580 and Quinn Emanuel Trial Lawyers. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black. Sometimes he fails at fitting in, but we're okay with that. You're inside the Tavis Smiley Show.
You are indeed with Ollie Winston, who covers criminal justice and surveillance. We've spent this hour talking about the violent rise of No Lives Matter, the way these young people are being radicalized, including some black youth who are being radicalized, and more importantly, to what extent black America needs to be aware and concerned about being targeted by the rise of these splinter groups under the banner, if you will, of No Lives Matter. I want to ask Ollie Winston in a moment about what happens when the Trump administration cuts the budget, as they already have, to fight counterterrorism, to fight the far right. I want to ask him about what happens when the Trump administration moves, as they have, to end investigations into extremism inside the U.S. military. And so with less countermeasures to curb extremism, what is it that we can expect to happen in the coming months and years? We'll get to the Trump part of this conversation in just a second. Before I do that, let me just ask whether or not we can pull these folk out of these rabbit holes, Ali. Are there cases of persons who have escaped and renounce this world of No Lives Matter that allow us something that we can harvest and support and build on?
You know, it's a very new phenomenon. It's only a couple of years old. There is not the same, getting out of extremist groups, pulling oneself out of those worlds is a very difficult prospect to begin with, let alone for, there's no mechanism for it. There's no one-size-fits-all solution, even for folks who are involved in traditional groups with set ideologies, that are a little bit more clear-cut and easier to kind of read in terms of what the mores of the in-group are and what the pull factor is and what the push factor is, right? What pulls people into these groups and what pushes them out. In this case, sometimes you'll see people back away from it because of they're actually just repulsed by what they've witnessed. Some of I don't want to describe it on the air. Your listeners can read my pieces about it to see what sort of behavior is actually, what sort of content is actually fronted in these worlds. It's really horrific stuff. It's depraved. That is a push factor. Oftentimes, people will have crises of conscience, but again, the age of these folks is so tender. Like, we're talking teenagers, people who are very much still children, that it's such a recent phenomenon that we really we've not seen that many formers come out and speak about why they chose to leave this movement. Honestly, the people who I've seen leave it are the ones who just get pressured out of it. Yeah. There are folks who kind of hang on and like lurk. They'll watch in the background and observe like other people doing the most horrific stuff in those networks. But the hardcore participants, like the ones who I've seen who've gotten out and are locked up and whatnot, they're completely unrepentant about this. And quite frankly, the prison, carceral environments only deepen their behavior because they're so deeply, like their offense, their offensive commitment is a sexual offense, and those folks are treated much differently inside than, violent criminals.
As Ali said,
but it's a difficult question. I don't have the answers to it, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I respect that. As Ali said, this stuff is depraved. Depraved in a lot of ways. If you want to get a little deeper into what we need to be aware of and keep our eye on, the piece is called "The Violent Rise of No Lives Matter." It's in Wired, so go to wired.com, and you can read the story for yourself. We invited him on again just to give us some insight into the ways in which these kids are being radicalized and the ways in which black people in particular are being targeted by the violent rise of No Lives Matter. When we come forward in our remaining moments with Mr. Winston, I want to ask him about what happens in the years to come, the days to come, when the Trump administration cuts the budget for counterterrorism, fighting against the far right, ending investigations into extremism in the military and beyond. That in our remaining moments with Ali Winston when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Helping to stretch your moral and political imagination. This is Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
You know where you want to go in life, and City National Bank can help. City National knows the dedication it takes to build your vision for the future into a reality, and our team is here for you. We have a wide range of options to help, from personal savings accounts to interest-bearing money market savings accounts and more, all designed to help you get where you want to go. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Learn more at cnb.com. City National Bank is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada, member FDIC.
My mom has decided to learn to paint, and she's good.
My dad's now into creative cuisine, and I've already put on 6 pounds.
Learning new things comes with age.
My mom, she started forgetting my name and what we're talking about.
Forgetting well-known things doesn't. Memory loss may be a sign of Alzheimer's disease. Early detection gives you and your loved one time to plan for the future. Learn the warning signs of Alzheimer's at 10signs.org. Brought to you by the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Time is up. The IRS is in full collection mode for 2024, issuing liens, levies, and garnishments to anyone who has a past tax debt or unfiled tax returns. Don't wait till it's too late. Your paycheck and bank accounts are at risk of being seized. Call now and stop the collection process today. If you're living check to check, no matter how much you're making, you still may qualify for the Fresh Start programs offered by the IRS to reduce or even eliminate your tax debt. It's just a 5-minute call to get your options, and it's free. If you owe back taxes, have years of unfiled tax returns, under audit, have a wage bank levy, or finally just want to sleep better, business or personal, call the experts at Republic Tax Relief while there's still time. A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau, and tough. This veteran-owned company has the fight you need to take on the IRS. Don't go at it alone. The call is free. Call their hotline number now, 800-246-1923. That's 800-246-1923. Find out if you qualify today. Call 800-246-1923. 1323 or go to republictaxrelief.com.
He's a paradigm pioneer and the top-rated African-American talk show host in the nation, according to Talkers Magazine. You're tapped in with Tavis Smiley right now.
Tavis, Smiley, and Ali Winston, I recognize this has been a tough conversation. It's been tough for me to sit here and just kind of moderate it. But if you are a parent, you need to read this article in Wired.com called The Violent Rise of No Lives Matter. Everybody ought to read it. But if you are a parent, and you are unaware of the stuff that your child is doing online and the stuff that they're tapping into and the ways that their minds are being framed and fashioned and the ways that some of these kids, including black kids, are being radicalized, before it's too late, I encourage you to read this piece called The Violent Rise of No Lives Matters. It's hard to get through. I'm not going to lie. It's brilliant reporting on Ali's part. It's hard to get through in some places and spaces. It is, to use his word earlier, there's some depraved stuff in here. But you can't put your head in the sand, right? You got to be aware and alert and awake. And that's why I want you to read this piece called The Violent Rise of No Lives Matter, as difficult as this conversation may have been to sit through and to listen to. I want to close in the last few minutes I have with what happens in the days to come, Ali, if the Trump administration continues down this path of cutting budgets for counterterrorism efforts. They're not interested in holding the far right accountable. Obviously, that's their base. What happens when they end investigations into extremism in the U.S. military? We know that's one space where these radicalized folk end up. So the ultimate question is, what do we expect when we rid ourselves of the tools to curb, to arrest this kind of extremism?
So we can look at the first Trump administration for the answers there, right? That those years were marked by the lead up to Trump's presidency was marked by some significant militancy from the far right. And during his term, violence by the extreme right wing, neo-Nazis, racists, Klansmen, the like. I mean, Charlottesville in 2017 was a great example of this. But it rose to levels not seen for decades. And the threat of extreme right-wing terrorism is still, if you listen to the FBI, but when they were actually independent and, had a director who was not a wild-eyed extremist of himself. I mean, the guy looks like he spun out 6 Ways from Sunday, which I guess is why he lives in Las Vegas. But if you look at what Christopher Wray said when he testified in front of Congress about terrorism last, they did point, the Bureau recognized extreme right-wing terrorism. They wouldn't put it in those terms, but that is the single greatest violent threat to this country. And I have been reporting on this world for almost a decade now, and I will say that during the Biden administration, there was a very severe crackdown on organized extreme right-wing groups. The Proud Boys are essentially Proud Boys and Oath Keepers. They're essentially the centrist version of this. The Bureau went very deep into this world. They recently listed right before the administration changed over, they listed the Telegram Collective, a noxious propaganda network that is at the center of a series, dozens actually, of terrorism offenses, mass shootings, bomb plots, what have you, in the United States and abroad, on 3 continents. They listed them as a foreign terrorist organization. That is not something the Trump administration will do. If anything, I wrote a piece about this for Vanity Fair in February. If anything, they are going to gun for groups like Black Lives Matter, Palestinian Solidarity Organizations, and anti-fascists as their own versions of domestic terrorism. There is a bill in Congress right now sponsored by Marjorie Taylor Greene to designate Antifa anti-fascist. They like to make a nice, cute little name to try and get away from the actual meaning of the word, to designate Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization. So you will see a rejiggering of the Bureau's priorities towards non-existent threats or towards immigration enforcement, which has already happened with DHS. Every single law enforcement agent in the Department of Homeland Security has been reassigned from white-collar crime, terrorism, scammers, what have you, onto immigration enforcement. That is what will happen under this administration.
Nope, I see the pivot. It's a dangerous pivot, but I'm glad you called it out for what it is. The Violent Rise of No Lives Matter can be found at Wired.com. The author of that piece has been our guest in this hour, Ali Winston. Thank you for your time, sir, and for your reporting. Good to have you on.
Thank you so much, sir. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure's mine. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. A federal judge dismissed New York City Mayor Eric Adams' corruption case with prejudice, meaning the charges can't be brought up again. Adams had pleaded not guilty to bribery and fraud. Forecasters warn of life-threatening floods in the central U.S. as an atmospheric river could bring up to 4 months of rain in less than a week, causing historic flooding. This will be followed by a heat dome in the southeast with temperatures 10 to 20 degrees above average. Teresa Hudson Jordan, a black woman, is suing Delta Airlines for discrimination after being removed from a flight for allegedly looking at a white flight attendant. The flight attendant accused Jordan of noncompliance and disruptive behavior. Delta says they have zero tolerance for discrimination. And former President Barack Obama accidentally photobombed a family's picture at the D.C. Cherry Blossom Festival, humorously saying, "My bad." Get BIN News on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
When you visit the San Diego Zoo Safari Park, the way you see the world